This might be the best free trade material you are not using. Sprue. You've got tons of used sprues that can be used to make anything. I needed to do something with mine because I've got boxes full of them. I've already paid way too much for this plastic. I'm not going to give most of it back to GW. I've got plenty of scatter terrain, so I'm going to make an objective marker. I'm not just gluing little bits of sprue together. For the last part of the build, I'm turning sprue into moldable plastic. Yes, really. The easiest way to tell it's sprue is its boxy shape. So I'm going to make some dynamite. I clipped out a length of sprue, then removed any large bits. With a hobby knife, I removed the corners, then I slowly cut away more and more until it started to look round. I cut this into 3 equal lengths and glued the sticks together in a triangle shape. Now it's starting to look like dynamite. To make the fuse, we need fire. So I lit a tea light. Less dramatic than you were expecting. I cut a short length of sprue, then heated this over the tea light. While it's getting hot, I'm gently pulling the 2 ends apart. It's good to be patient here, as it quickly goes from solid to melting. This is when it starts to stretch, creating a thin piece of plastic. After a few goes, I had 3 pieces of fuse. These were glued to the top of each stick of the explosives. The dynamite was base coat with World Bearers Red. For the cartoon look, I used 2 thin coats for a smooth opaque layer. The top edges were highlighted with Wild Rider Red as they catch the most light. Scrag Brown was stippled towards the bottom of each stick. This adds weathering and shading to the explosives. I haven't used washers as they will pull in any flat spots, showing this isn't round. The cords were painted with 2 thin coats of Wraithbone to finish the cartoon look. This instantly reads as explosives. Here's the finished bunch of dynamite. The next piece of the objective marker took me ages to figure out how to build. There isn't a single tutorial for it online. Click the link in the description for our free painting guide so you've got a painted army to go with your objective markers. The next build is an ammo crate. I can't believe no one is doing this online. I clipped out a runner from a sprue and trimmed off the extra bits sticking out the sides. It needed smooth sides to reduce any gaps. Cut this down into 6 equal lengths. 3 bits were glued together side by side so the diagonal sides were flush with each other. This was repeated on top of the first 3. Once it had dried, I clipped off any excess bits of sprue, then I filed any bits I couldn't clip. This hides any mistakes. This removes the angled edges on the side and any longer bits of sprue. Now it looks like a box. I wanted this to look like an ammo crate, so I glued the magazine to the top of it. There are some gaps between the bits of plastic, so these were filled with liquid green stuff. This can be thinned with water to smooth it out. Once it's dried, any excess can be removed with a hobby knife, creating a smooth finish. After priming, I base coat the crate with castellan green and olive green to give it that military feel. This was edge highlighted with Strachan green. The sharp edges make this easy with the side of your brush. Scrag brown was stippled like the dynamite. I removed most of the paint from the brush, then stabbed the crate with this, creating loads of small dots. The magazine was base coated with lead belcher. I used 2 thin coats for this step. Then the skull and crossbones were picked out with Wild Rider Red, as red spells danger. I finished it with our carbon oil wash as this knocks the metal back and pulls into the recesses without me having to shade it by hand. That's the crate done. The final piece isn't something you build, it's something you make. I turned the sprue into actual mouldable plastic. If you want to try dry brushing or the oil wash used for the magazine, click the bestsellers link below. The last piece isn't something you build, it's something you make. I'm going to turn sprue into a barrel. I clipped an empty sprue into loads of small pieces, the smaller the better. Then I placed these in a jar and covered them with 100% acetone nail polish remover. This turns the sprue into sprue goo. I left this overnight for the plastic to become a thick paste. I laid a sheet of baking paper over my cutting mat, then scooped a dollop of sprue goo onto it. I added another sheet of baking paper, then rolled this out with a rolling pin, creating a smooth thin sheet of plastic. I cut out a rectangle with scissors and wrapped this around the pencil to create a round shape. Once this is dried, I used some spare glue to fill the gap where the 2 ends meet. I smoothed out the shape with a hobby knife to make the sides straighter. This was filed to smooth the sides. Then I glued 2 spare bits of plastic to each end, which are tidied up as the cylinder was. The gaps were filled with liquid green stuff. Any excess was removed with a hobby knife. Now it's starting to look like an actual barrel, not a lump of melted plastic. The drum was painted with McCrae blue. Two thin coats were used to create a smooth base coat. The top was highlighted with Calgar blue. This defines the shape. Scrag ground was stippled on with the same dry brush technique to add some shading and weathering as before. I sponged on a bright silver with Knott's Hobbies light weathering sponges to show the paint chipping. I painted on Knott's Hobbies Rust Oil Wash to complete the weathered look. Here's the finished barrel. It's impossible to tell it was made with sprues. These aren't just 3 random tutorials, I'm going to make an objective marker with them. I started by gluing the barrel first because it's the biggest piece. Then I glued an extra ammo crate I made earlier and the other ammo crate on top of it. I finished this gluing the dynamite to the floor too. I spread Russian mud from the layout on the base, creating a muddy battlefield. Don't worry, if there are any gaps you can't reach, no one will be able to see them. Now it actually looks like one build, not just 3 things you could make. Once the mud had dried, I dry brushed the whole base with steel leaves and drab, highlighting the bits in the texture paste. This was finished with a black rim. I used a Bad and Black from Games Workshop. Here's the finished objective marker, an ammo cache and supplies for you and your buddies to rage war over. In this video, I use things Games Workshop never talks about. Click here to find out the secrets GW doesn't want you to know.